The following podcast is being brought to you by the Defy Life Podcast Network.
Welcome to Aftergate, powered by the Defy Life Network.
Are y'all ready?
Aftergate is a podcast series highlighting Colgate Alumni of Color in their professional endeavors Aftergate.
Are y'all ready?
Aftergate is hosted by Alvin Glimpf, aka Al, and Herman Dubois, aka Jerry.
Are y'all ready?
We are doing Aftergate because Colgate University has produced innovators who have changed the world every day, yet many alumni of color and the mainstream Colgate community are unaware of the amazing accomplishments of alums of color.
Are y'all ready?
Welcome to an episode of Aftergate that is extremely special. So I'm always excited for these conversations, but today especially excited because it's remembered by many. And so glad to be part of it and excited for this to hopefully be the beginning of a new journey. So this is Aftergate Live today, Season 2. I am Alvin Glimpf, aka Al, co-host. I am here with my hermano of 30 years plus, right? My co-host, Mr. Herman Dubois. How you doing, my brother?
Feeling extremely blessed
Yes.
to be back on campus.
Yes.
Brings a lot of bittersweet memories. Hopefully we get a chance to share a little bit of that with y'all both today in this episode. And we'll be here throughout the weekend, so looking to engage with students even after this recording. And love to go even deeper, but we have someone today that I refer to as the myth, the man, the legend. That was very inspirational and just has no idea how many lives he touched over the decades and continues to do the work. And so he's very humble about it. And I just want you to know you're in a room with someone that has just done amazing things, and you're going to get to hear his story today.
So, and that's what the Aftergate is all about, right? It's about lifting up the stories of Colgate's greatest alumni of color that come on this campus and did amazing things while they were here, but also have done amazing things once they've graduated. And as we sit in front of students, it's hard not to reflect on when we were there, and that this gentleman, who was a recent graduate when we were on campus, was engaging us in this way, standing in front of us, talking about his journey and inspiring us as students. And so in many ways, that experience is what got us to create Aftergate, the podcast, because we wanted to make sure that we could lift up those stories, lift up those experiences, document those stories, amplify the accomplishments and work of alumni of color. But also, the part of it is we want to make sure we're leveraging our network so that we too can be engaged in this Colgate experience and fulfill the promise that we were told while we were here. All right, so that's Aftergate. You ready?
That's right.
Let's introduce our guest. So let's officially welcome Brother LeRoy Potts, class of 1985, to Aftergate Podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I just am moved deeply by your words, and I guess we all influence each other, but you influence me. You guys influence me. I can't tell you how honored I am to be a guest here on this show, which I think is so amazing. The things that you have been doing, I've been listening since the very first podcast. You've had How many now? How many now is
We're
this?
up to, we did 23 last season, and I believe this will be show number 5. So 28. This is the 20th show.
Everyone is fresh. Everyone has just so much information in it, so much meaning. I told you as we were, driving over, how some of them have moved me deeply. Like I get choked up sometimes, with the things that people are sharing. Everybody has their own experience, and your show honors that. It doesn't make anybody feel like, oh, it should be this way, or they should feel that way, or they should have done this. Everybody gets to talk about their experience, and you honor it, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you providing that context. So let's jump on in. So you are class of 1985, which means you graduated high school in 1981.
Don't say it.
Just for the record, 1981.
1981.
So for those who aren't aware of what time was like back in 1981, if you could give us a sense of what is the world like, what's going on in your world, in the broader world, to give us a sense of that context of pre-Colgate life for you.
Well, I was coming from Philadelphia, and coming from specifically the Mount Airy, Germantown area, and to some degree Elkins Park. My family, working class, middle class. I went to Central High School, which was one of the sort of academically gifted high schools in the city. Has a long tradition. Lots of people have come out of there, and it exposed me to kids from all over the city. Upper middle class kids, poor kids, kids from every race and every ethnic background, and it really opened up a world for me. I really loved my time at Central and very grateful for it. And Philly at that time was an interesting place. It was on hard times. A lot of cities were experiencing disinvestment and urban flight, and so it wasn't the most vibrant economically, but it was vibrant culturally, I think, because of all of this diversity: Jewish, Polish, white, black, Jamaican, just new immigrants, people who've been there for many years. And so that's the kind of environment that I grew up in. And so when I was saying earlier, when I got to Colgate, I had at least had that behind me. And I didn't feel like this was necessarily alien territory, because I was kind of familiar with how to get along with lots of different people and engage with lots of different people. And so I carried that with me here. Yeah.
Take us back a little bit to, how did you hear about Colgate? What was your introduction to Colgate?
Oh, before we do that,
Sure.
Can I also add?
Yeah.
Sister Sledge.
Hey.
Time out.
Okay.
Y'all know who Sister Sledge is?
We are family.
That's Sister Sledge.
Donna Summer. Sister
On the
Sledge.
radio.
Yeah. So that was the disco and all of that music. That was a part of my milieu, I guess, and that was influencing me.
Okay.
Hip hop was just kind of breaking into the scene. We had the Sugar Hill Gang
Yes.
and all of that, and so it was a fun time to be up here and to see all that mixing.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, with the birth of hip hop in its embryonic stage, and I guess R&B, funk, and disco in its prime, Colgate doesn't exactly fall into that demographic. So I'm even more fascinated now. How'd you hear about Colgate and end up here?
It's a funny thing. I don't know how I heard about Colgate. I just knew about it. And I knew that it was a very good school, but I didn't know a whole lot more than that. I just knew it was a good school. And I remember going to this room in the high school that was set aside for visiting representatives from colleges who were coming, and they'd come and they'd bring pamphlets and they'd talk to you about the school. And today was Colgate Day, and I was the only one who showed up. The only one in the high school who came out for Colgate. And I had this wonderful conversation with this lovely woman who encouraged me to go, and I applied and got in, and I just remember hitting the ceiling with joy when I opened up the letter. Do they even send letters anymore?
And they might send a text for all
yeah.
So what's the life like when you get up here at Colgate? So I can appreciate that you come from a diverse high school, which might have helped in the transition, but give us a sense of what's the campus life like in the 80s, because we don't get there for another 6 years, so I can appreciate what it was like then. But early 80s, I feel like that's about the time HRC is being created,
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
give us a sense of what's happening.
There was a lot of activism on campus. There was a lot of activism. There were, just some amazing students that I feel privileged to have known and gone to Colgate with. People who started HRC, people who were behind WeFunk. I don't think it was that long after Sojourners began.
Sojourners.
There were just a lot of things that were going on campus, a lot of activism. Students felt very engaged, I think, politically, to do something to make the environment more of what they wanted it to be.
So you're a decade after the first women are on campus. By then, is it a thing? Right? Has the university adjusted to women being on campus, or is there still some figuring things out?
It's a great question. I think the feeling was that women are a part of this university. I don't think their presence was at all being questioned, but it was being questioned in terms of how do we make it more hospitable to them? How do we engage with them as women, as collegians? Just how to make it better.
Okay.
So you get up to Colgate and you're having these various movements on campus. I'm curious, where did you reside over the 4 years? Can you walk us through freshman through senior year, your various residential?
Jeez. I remember freshman year, I remember Center Stillman. That's what I remember.
Okay.
Yeah. And Stillman again, because then I was a RA at some point.
Yeah.
So Stillman, that's what I remember.
Wow, okay.
Any traveling abroad?
Yes.
You did travel abroad. Okay.
Yeah, I went to, it's interesting, I didn't get into a Colgate study group.
Okay.
So I went with another university, I went with Brandeis University, and I studied in Jerusalem, Israel. I'd always been fascinated by the Middle East politics, and just international relations generally. But for some reason I wanted to go to the Middle East, and so I found Brandeis, and I found this study group that they were leading, and I spent a semester in Israel.
Okay.
And it allowed me to travel to Egypt for the first time, and that was fascinating.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you care to elaborate a little bit about the study abroad in terms of the impact it may have had on your Colgate experience and maybe changing your perspective?
It's life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And I would encourage anybody who's listening, who's a student today, go abroad if you can. But what's also interesting is that there are so many international students on this campus. And that brings a different dynamic to the experience that I had, where we didn't have that many international students, and you didn't have quite the environment to really engage around different cultures and different people, the way that I think students today can. So, yeah. But it was life-changing to go overseas and to study abroad, and again, to put yourself in another environment where you don't know everything, but you are at least open to what the world is going to throw at you. Different food, different language, different culture, different religion, all of that. And, you know, that's been a part of my journey. So, you know, I've worked in the international affairs arena for my career. And, you know, not to brag or anything, but, you know, I can say, wow, I've been to like at least 50-some different countries now.
How do you not brag?
I'm like, you sound like you're bragging. It sound like you're bragging.
I'm not. I'm deeply honored to be able to say that. But I want people to get out. I want them to see the world, because there's so much out there. Yeah.
So when you think about your 4-year passage through Colgate, what do you identify as your accomplishments? You know, whether it was in the classroom, out of the classroom, socially, personally, mentally, what were the highlights for you when you really think about the 4 years in good old Hamilton, New York?
You know, it wasn't all peaches and cream. It wasn't all perfect. And I think the most difficult part for me was managing a number of different identities and managing, just trying to find places where I felt comfortable and fit in. And so when you ask that question, I have to say the thing that I'm most proud about is just being able to hold it together for 4 years and come out, you know, a relatively sane, decent person. I held it together. Again, you've heard me say, I want people to thrive here. I want them to, you know, everybody's going to have their own experience, and some will love it, some maybe less so, but I want people to come out of here prepared for what's going to come at them, and certainly for the time that they're here, I certainly want them to thrive if at all possible. You know? Take advantage of all the things that are here, the other students, the professors, opportunities to go overseas, whatever. There's a lot here.
What was your major?
International relations and poli-sci.
Wow. I'm curious. I always like to. For me, my family knew very little about Colgate before. Maybe even know less now that I'm graduated. And it always is fascinating to me to overlay it to some of my classmates who are the 12th or 13th person in their family to have attended Colgate. And I'm curious to know, how does your family, well, one, how did they interact and engage with you while you were on campus? Like, my mother dropped me off, she came back, graduation. That was the interaction here. I'm curious to know, how did your family engage with you during your 4 years?
Wow, boy. My father is an honorary Colgate grad. I think he graduated with me.
I've seen pictures of your father.
He comes back for reunions.
I was about to say, I've seen him at reunions.
He joins me at reunions. It's a little embarrassing to have your dad at my age. But it's fun. We love coming and visiting. He loves the university. He wears his Colgate gear proudly.
Very nice.
And my mother, she loved coming up. She would come up for Spring Jam. Remember that?
Yeah.
Spring Jam, wow.
Yeah.
You also have Spring Jam?
They're like, what's that? What's a
No.
jam?
That's a no. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So any family members, any recruiting, sending people up there with your father and mother, like being honorary Colgate alums? Did anyone else from your neighborhood community? Just kind of curious.
Yes. Jill St. Clair.
Yeah.
So she found out about it through me, and then she followed me. And we're neighbors. Our mothers are best friends.
Oh, wow.
So Jill's like family. She is family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to take a break for our sponsor and allow our sponsor to get some shine, Hope Murals, and then we will come back and finish up this conversation with Brother LeRoy Potts.
So this episode is sponsored by Hope Murals. Hope Murals is a nonprofit that provides adolescent youth with an interactive experience of creative expression via an urban arts platform that stimulates both mental and physical development. Please visit their website at www.hopemurals.org to learn more and find ways you can support the work they do.
Welcome back. Before we jump in, I always like to make sure you show some love to our sponsor, Hope Murals. Check out their website, hopemurals.org, and learn more about what they're doing with our urban youth to expose them to arts and self-development, the urban arts. So check them out, show them some love, raise your awareness, and make a donation while you're on their website. We would also like to say, if you are interested in being a sponsor, make sure you send us an email, aftergatepodcast@gmail.com. Show us some love. And speaking of showing some love, we want to show some love to our network, the Defy Life Network, and you can check them out at godefylife.com. You can find some really interesting, empowering, relevant written content on their website. You can also check out dope podcasts like Aftergate on their podcast hub, the defylifepods.com website. And just a reminder, we are on all of your favorite streaming platforms. So from Spreaker, Spotify, Apple Pods, we're on all of them. You can check us out there. And if you like the dope gear that we got on, Aftergate, show us some love at the defylifegear.com website. Look up our show, Aftergate, and you can order t-shirts, hats, hoodies, the whole nine. We don't have mugs yet, but
Okay, it's coming.
good idea though, right? Great idea. But let's jump back into our conversation. So as always, as we lead into the second half of our conversation, we always like to ask our guests a non-professional, non-Colgate question to just tap into their opinions, expertise, or just something that they just would love to share and talk about. And so today, I want to get your sense on people just going back and researching their ancestry and their history. And I'm talking because I'm one who really cares about that, right? I'm able to go back, particularly on my father's side, and we can go back to my great-great-great-grandfather, Frank, and his wife, Delilah Glimpf, who were slaves, right? So we can go back that far in terms of tracing our history. My brother is a history buff, Ancestry.com, and just is really big on researching history from that perspective as well. So I know this is something that is interesting you, so I would love to get your insight on the why people should go back and retrace their history.
Yeah, I want to hear more about this, about your family and all of that. But yeah, I think it's so important for people to do this because it grounds you. I felt uniquely grounded after I began the search and started doing research and finding stories. And what was so fascinating is to find stories that kind of linked up with what I was doing professionally, if you can believe that. So I work in the realm of migration, immigration, work on issues related to refugees, people seeking protection here in the U.S. And when I began this search, the very first story that I came across was that my grandmother, who I knew and helped raise me was orphaned. I didn't know that. No one in the family knew that. And not just orphaned, she lived in an orphanage.
Wow.
Yeah. At the age of 5, she was living in an orphanage in Washington, D.C. with her older sister, who was only about 5 years older than her. And this was the year 1910. Okay? 1910. They're in this orphanage, and I began researching, as I'm trying to find out more about her story, I learned a lot about the institution in which she was orphaned. And the institution, called the National Home for Destitute Colored Women and Children.
Wow.
That was the name of it. Was founded in 1863.
Pre-slavery, the end of slavery. Wow.
So what's going on? The Civil War is going on.
Correct.
Right? So what's happening is 1863, Civil War is raging. Enslaved people are trying to get to Union-held places, Union-held territory. And people are on the move. And many are coming to Washington, D.C., and they have no place to sleep. They're sleeping in the streets, and many are dying. It's incredible statistics about it. Maybe a third of the formerly enslaved who arrive die from sickness and disease because of these squalid conditions. They're hungry, they have no sanitary codes or whatever to take care of them, and so it's just a very difficult situation. And abolitionists set up in Washington and in other cities these asylums. So this asylum that my grandmother is in now 1910, well after the Civil War, of course, but still it's still in function, it's still existing. It's set up to take in formerly enslaved people. And they're using the words, and I went into the Library of Congress and I'm looking at original documents around the founding of this institution. And they're using the words refugee, asylum, all of the words that I'm using in my work every day. I just was blown away by that. And to go back and to see that connection, through my grandmother to this institution was profound for me. And that's the kind of stuff that I think people can tap into when they start researching their history. I had no idea that my grandmother was in this institution. I had no idea that this institution existed. I had no idea that this is really, in some ways, the founding of our own national programs around refugees and asylum protection. It's coming out of the Civil War. No idea until I started doing this research. And as I said, it grounds you. And when I think about the strength of my grandmother and having survived this, and then being placed with a family in Philadelphia, and just all of that movement and all of that is deeply moving to me. And I wanted to share something else that was fascinating about it. So as I'm reading these documents, I'm reading names that just knock me off my feet. I'm turning a page and, Harriet Tubman comes in today and helps manage the house. Harriet Tubman.
Wow.
And it's just matter of fact. It's matter of fact. 3 of the most iconic people are associated with this house, and it's just totally forgotten, totally lost to history. Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, his wife is on the board of this institution, and Elizabeth Keckley. Do you know who Elizabeth Keckley is?
I have no idea.
Okay. Elizabeth Keckley is the formerly enslaved seamstress to Mary Todd Lincoln. okay? President's wife, Elizabeth Keckley, she, through her own effort, buys her freedom. And she also becomes a confidant to Mary Todd Lincoln. Okay, she's not just her dressmaker, she's her best friend. Okay, formerly enslaved woman. And she's living in this house at one point. She actually dies in the house.
Wow.
And I'm just reading, these papers, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible history. And so it's stuff like that that I get really excited about, and I want people to do their own family research, because they'll find interesting stuff, I'm sure.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I agree.
Thank you. So with that said, take us back now to graduating Colgate and walk us through the journey of the man you've become today, and sort of give us some of those highlights of graduate Colgate, what's next? Where do you go career-wise? Where do you go personally? And take us through memory lane.
Sure. I didn't have a grand plan, I don't know if anybody does, but I certainly didn't. I didn't know how to get from point A to point B. I didn't think I would be here where I am today, but, just trial and error and just making your way. And so I went to Washington, worked on the Hill for a couple of years, then went back to grad school, went to University of Texas, Austin, go to graduate school, get my master's in public policy, and then ended up at graduating and going to the State Department and working at the State Department for about 17, 18 years. And throughout that time, again, I was very interested in human rights documentation, and trying to help people tell their stories. That's what I see it as. So, again, people in flight, fleeing, very difficult situations, trying to help tell their story to various audiences within the U.S. government.
Wow.
So when you said on the Hill, can you, especially for our folks listening, can you share a little about your role or your title or department you worked in without divulging too much? But how'd you come from Colgate to decide? I'm going to go to D.C. and work on the Hill and just show up and you get hired.
Well, first off, I was a peon. I was a nothing sort of person on the Hill, but it was a great experience in that it just exposed me to so much. And I tell people all the time, you've got to network, you've got to make connections. Again, this place allows you to do that, and you just never know where you're going to end up, just by talking and making friendships and learning about other people. And through a connection, I got a job working on the Hill, working for a U.S. Senator, and spent 2 years there, and that thing leads to the next thing, but it's about, again, the connections, developing relationships, networks. So Colgate is a network, and within that network are other networks of people who are doctors, people who are lawyers, people who are into the arts and the sciences. You've got to tap into these networks, and one thing leads to another, and that's, I know it sounds easy, but...
So how did Texas come into the mix? Because you went from Hamilton, D.C., and then Austin?
Austin, yeah.
Something about that just I can't understand.
Well, a Hamilton winter, yeah.
Say less.
Hamilton winter, yeah. I think I chose Austin for the warmth, and I went down there. I went to actually learn from someone who I admired back in the day, and that was one of the professors there was Barbara Jordan. It's a name that probably many people have not heard in a while, if ever, but incredibly important person in civil rights, and she was a professor there, and I took an ethics class from her. And so that's what took me to Texas and LBJ.
So this next question is, as we were crafting questions for the show, this next question was really had students in mind. It really is a question that seeks your perspective of, if you had an opportunity to talk to yourself as you were entering Colgate, what would be some of the advice you would give that entering freshman? And then, conversely, if you had an opportunity to offer advice to yourself as you were graduating Colgate, what would that advice be? And so I think the fact that we have a room full of students is even more interesting to hear that question, because they're actually listening now. So what would you tell incoming and what would you tell outgoing Brother Potts?
And I'm very self-conscious about this question because I want to get it right for the students that are right here and listening. So, I might say two things. And so one of the two things would be study, okay? And we talked a little about this, and, I want you guys to, push back if I'm all, or tell me what you think.
We're going to push.
But finding that balance, we talked about finding the balance between being active, pushing the university, and remembering why you're here. You're here to be a student, to learn. And so I wish I'd pushed myself more to be a better student academically. The second thing I would say is I would have told myself to be much more confident. I am still growing into the person that I want to be. I know that may sound strange, and people may laugh at it, but I am still becoming. I'm still becoming something, and I want people here. I want the students here to be as confident as they can be. Find your voice, find it now, find it soon, because you all are in an incredibly important place. You really are. You're going to go out and you're going to do amazing things. You really are. You're going to touch people that you had no idea you're going to touch. Remember that. You've got a voice. You're here because you're smart. You're here because you've got something to give. And I want you to feel confident about that gift. I want you to feel confident. I want you to be able to stand up in front of people and tell them what you're thinking, what you're feeling. You got to do it. So I would tell myself to be a bit more confident.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about when you left? What would you tell as you go out and leave Colgate and you're out into the world? What advice would you give that LeRoy Potts?
Just to keep on. Keep on. Just hang in there. Have faith. Persevere. Have faith. Yeah.
Gotcha.
How about you? Can I ask the question again?
He gonna flip
Come
it.
on.
He gonna flip it.
Okay, look. I asked the questions. If I was to give, actually, the advice I would give myself as I left would be to not worry about if there is a path for where I want it to be, but investigate and help somebody and get help in finding the path. And for me, when I left here, what I wanted to do, I didn't know anybody who was doing it. So because I couldn't see how to get there, I just said, well, then I'll do what I can see the path, and I'll do that. And I just wish I had opened up and not been afraid to say, I want to do something that I wanted to be on the radio. I had done 4 years of radio here at WRCU, and if someone had asked and I would be honest, I would say I wanted to be on the radio and be a DJ, but I didn't know anybody, and so I really didn't think that it was achievable. In reality, if I had just shared that and someone had then said, oh man, all you got to do is go out and intern, and you intern, and eventually and this and is that and is this, and you'll be there. But not knowing that, I said, well, I guess I'll go to graduate school. And while I'm not a person of regrets, because I just believe, you make the best of your path, and that's all I've been trying to do all my life. And my path has allowed me to do some amazing things, change hundreds of thousands of lives. So I have no regret on my path. I just know the advice I would have had me going a different path. So just speak up, that's share. And to your point about the networks, if I had shared, I would have tapped into those networks of Colgate, which are some amazingly powerful networks that I didn't take advantage of for decades until after I graduated Colgate.
Jared, how about you?
You bring up confidence, and I came out of high school with this sense of a false sense of confidence. I think that I was being groomed to believe that I should be at an Ivy League institution, and that I was qualified. And then I get to Colgate, and I spent the 4 years with a chip on my shoulder, feeling like I had to prove myself, because everything that I faced here made me feel like I didn't belong. And I oftentimes needed someone to say, you're worthy. And was a little embarrassed, didn't know how to ask for help because I had too much ego and pride. Help academically, help mentally, help emotionally, too machismo to admit that I missed home, missed mom's cooking, missed the hood, and constantly functioned up here with that chip on my shoulder. And when I think about it, that just added more pressure to myself that wasn't necessary, because there was enough to deal with up here on its own, never mind me adding my own pressure to that experience. So that's what I would tell myself coming in as a freshman into Colgate, that no matter how outstanding I thought I was in high school, as they told Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz, this ain't Kansas no more. This wasn't the Bronx. This wasn't Harlem. This wasn't New York City public schools, okay? And to feel that I belonged and that I was worthy just meant that my walk and my journey wasn't going to be his or yours. It was going to be mine. And that I was the author of that, and I needed to own that was something that I feel that I would have benefited from. And then graduating Colgate, still had that chip in a different kind of way, though, because now I felt a greater responsibility to take the opportunity that I had survived Colgate, instead of looking at it as I had succeeded at Colgate. Just a mindset. It's a mind shift that I think would have really helped me go into the next chapter of life, whether it was grad school or careers, is that, own your story, challenge yourself, dream, but believe that dreams can come true, and seek out those individuals. It is your responsibility to seek out those individuals who are, even to Alvin's point, doing what you think you want to do. I had a couple of summer jobs in different fields that I thought would be positive experiences because other people thought they would be good experiences. And I realized that, why am I doing these different things when this is not what I want to be doing? So the greatest challenge is to ask yourself, what do you want to do with your life? And then go get it. Go seek it. And use the university and all of its resources and people and faculty and administrators who are incredibly smart and intelligent, paid professionals to do one thing: serve you. But that chip on my shoulder didn't let me go to them, ask for help and guidance, and say, I don't know, and I'm struggling. And I took that into my post-Colgate experience. And so that would be my takeaway.
And wouldn't you say that you could even, doesn't even have to be tapping in to Colgate per se, but the people who are associated with it. But so you made friends here, right? You left with friends, and those friends are doing some interesting things and can help you personally, spiritually process whatever's going on, whether it's Colgate or something else, right? Wouldn't you say that that's another thing that you should,
And if I can add, to this notion of friends, there are people you know, and there are people you are friends with, right? There's no loss in getting to know as many people as you can, right? I limited myself in who I could get to know because of that chip on my shoulder. And in the world, the more people you know, or as I was told, the more people that know you, the more opportunities you have to have great experiences, to learn things that maybe you would otherwise not learn just from knowing other people. And because I limited myself to who I wanted to know on campus and who I thought were my friends or build friendships with, I feel like that the human capital of opportunity that was here, I sold myself short. And so, and then on the flip side, have some amazing friendships. This man right here, we met summer of '87, and we're still rolling thick. And that wouldn't have happened had it not been for Colgate. And there's about a dozen other brothers and sisters that fall into that same sort of collective of folks that those friendships were built and bonded here. And I would never trade those. So yes, thank you for those words, and I encourage y'all all to get to know as many people as you can. 4 years is a long time to be on one campus. And if you go abroad, think about all the people you can meet abroad that you will benefit from in terms of just that exchange and the value add to life. With that said, if you could, in hindsight, sort of look back at your journey, in life, and particularly how Colgate played a part in that, is there anything that you would have done differently at Colgate that would put you in a better place, that would have aligned you to be who you are today and what you're doing professionally? Many of us are in positions professionally that have absolutely nothing to do with what we may have studied in undergrad or grad school. And I oftentimes, it's almost think it's unfair that we ask undergrads to have to declare a major by sophomore year, as if you've got it all figured out. Your major aligns with your career path, and you're just going to live happily ever after. And so if you could think back to what that experience was like, is there anything you would have particularly done or studied while you were at Colgate to have aligned with what you're doing today?
Yeah, I'm still trying to learn French. I would have gotten that French under my belt. Yeah.
Language, yeah.
Yeah, language is so key.
Gotcha. Okay. So, as we're coming up on our final questions, my next question is really going to center around what inspired you to found the Alumni of Color? What was happening on campus? What was the void? I just know by the time we meet you, there's this organization that is engaging students, and at a time where we needed that person to reach back and give us words of encouragement and words of strategy, because we were activists on this campus as well, trying to make things better for those behind us. And sometimes we were really about to go off the rails, and there were alumni that just said, let us have that conversation. You know, we will advocate for you on that. You don't have to risk yourself, your student career in doing that. Let me go talk to the Dean of Students and we'll handle that for you. So I'm curious to know, before that, what inspired you?
Well, again, I go back to the word thrive and how I think I was concerned about thriving, and I wanted other students to thrive, and I felt as though that could happen if we had more and deeper connections with alumni of color. And so when I got out, I set about working with other alums to help found this organization, which I'm amazed it's still around today. I'm tickled, I'm thrilled, and I hope it will continue to be an entity, a force that promotes engagement with between students, between alumni, and students in the university. I think nothing but positive things could and should be coming out of that relationship. There were other institutions that were also at the time establishing organizations like this. So I think we were right in the mix. I believe Harvard was establishing its alumni of color around that time, or maybe just had maybe a year or two prior. But there were other like institutions that were in this place where critical numbers of alumni were graduating, and they were looking back at the institutions and saying, hey, how can we make this experience better and more meaningful and change for the benefit of the students. I kept a lot of, if not all of the letters that I wrote, or letters that were written to me at the time, and this past year, turned them over to Colgate, turned them over to the library. So hopefully they're being preserved, and people can see for themselves some of the work that went into standing this organization up and what the reactions were at the time that this organization was proposed, because it wasn't all, oh, wonderful.
No, really?
No.
Really?
Yeah, there were lots of questions and lots of debates going on around whether or not this would be a separatist institution. Would it be would it be part of Colgate? What the relationship would look like? And I always knew in my head that I didn't want to establish something, that was going to be divisive and separate. I wanted a better relationship between the university, between alumni, between alumni and students, and I think that's what we have. But yeah, there was a lot of questioning and just questioning around the motives and what it would look like. And so some of that can be seen in the letters that people wrote to me.
Well, thank you for your efforts, as well as the other students and alums that were behind it. Also want to shout out all of the AOC leaders over the last 35 some odd years who have taken the reins and continue to push for engagement amongst alumni of color. Because if you are a listener of the Aftergate podcast, what you will hear is consistent themes of alums being disengaged after they leave. And some, it might take 6 months to return, some might take 6 years, some might not ever return, right, in terms of their engagement with this institution. But I think the Alumni of Color as an organization has consistently played a role giving those who want to engage an opportunity to engage. And for me, that was how I engaged initially. Why I'm on the Alumni Council now, so my engagement is broader. my initial engagement had been through them, as well as through the Office of Admissions and kind of repping Colgate recruiting down in Atlanta. But so thank you. It definitely has played an amazing role in the history of Colgate University. So appreciate that.
Thank you. It's an honor.
And so our last and final question, and this was really the premise in which Aftergate was started, which was to really intentionally create a platform where alumni of color can share resources to other alumni, can promote opportunities that they have, because we have such a rich network of alumni that we constantly hear that we don't leverage, we do not stay in connection. We all have our immediate little core of friends, but there are decades of alumni of color that are doing amazing things, and we don't want to just know each other and have relationships, but leverage all of this in this world, professionally and personally. And so we use this platform as a way to ask our guests, is there anything you'd like to promote or like to share or offer to the larger network, not only here in the audience, but obviously all those folks who are streaming live. Thank you for those who are streaming live all around the country. Anything you'd like to share?
Just thank you. This has been a wonderful opportunity to talk about Colgate, to talk about some of my work, and I'm just deeply grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, on that note, this has been another episode of Aftergate, Season 2, Aftergate Live. So thank you to our guests. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you to our students. Much appreciate the support. Appreciate all of those who are streaming. Much love for those who are on Zoom. Appreciate that. As always, remember, this Aftergate podcast is powered by the Defy Life Network. Shout out to my folk. And make sure you check out all the future podcasts in the future, because we got some dope, even more dope podcasts coming in the future. And on that note, peace, family.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shh. You hear that? Listen closer. That, my friend, is the deafening sound of focus. It drowns out all the useless noise that can clutter the moment. Naysayers don't exist. Haters? Smaters? The peanut gallery? Who's that? When you in your zone, all that noise and all that buzz is just elevator music. So, enjoy your journey, focus on your goal, and bask in the quiet roar that is progress. Because when it's your time to shoot that shot, spit that verse, or close that deal, the only voice that matters is yours. Defy life.